I read 9 books in May. Let's talk about them. It is the start of the new month and the end of the old one, so you know what that means. We are back for a reading wrap up. If you've been following along for a while, you know that I usually read a lot more than 9 books per month. In fact, this is probably my weakest reading month of the year, but weirdly, it was one of the best. And that's because I decided to be a lot more intentional with what I read, and it really did pay off because I actually spent last month finding some of my favorite books. And if you've stuck around for a while, you know the drill. I am going to tell you what the book is, give you a brief summary of the book, then tell you my rating and my personal review of it. I also want to flag that I do not count DNF'd books as completed books, so I won't be talking about the ones I did DNF because honestly they're not worth talking about. I just did not like them. So without further ado, let's get going. Kicked off the month in the best way possible because the first book I read was The Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare. This is the sequel to Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, the second book in the Chronicles of Castellane, and we continue following our main characters, Kel and Lynn. I don't want to give anything away, but this very much follows everything that happened in Swordcatcher, but times 10. It gets so much better. We are dealing with the implications of what happened at the end of the last book, both in Kel's POV and in Lynn's POV, and we explore the characters and the world with so much more depth. Oh, and the magic. How could I forget the magic? I ended up giving this book 5 stars, which should come as no surprise. It was absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was such an exceptional sequel. The twists, the characters, the world, like everything was wonderful in this book. And I already loved Swordcatcher, but this just takes it to a whole new plane, and I need to get my hands on the next book at once. I said this all in my review for Swordcatcher. This is definitely more of a slower paced, character driven fantasy story, even though a lot more happens in this book. That is a given for this series. High fantasy, politics, intrigue, such an interesting world, but the most important part of all this is the characters. Cassandra Clare uses some pretty exceptional prose in this series. She's really making you understand everything that's going on in extreme detail. I like that slowness, especially when it yields such an amazing books. I love giving myself a little bit of whiplash, and I definitely did that because the next book I read was Priest by Simone. This is told from the perspective of a Catholic priest who begins to fall for a woman who starts coming to his confessionals. How do I say it? She brings out a lot of desire in him. So this book explores a lot of questions about sexuality, religion, guilt, shame, like all of this stuff. I gave it 2 stars. I actually think the premise is quite fascinating. I do think those questions are important. I am also religious, so I'm happy that someone wrote a book exploring that topic a little more. However, there was no substance to this story whatsoever. It was just a ton of spice. Nothing was tying the main couple together except physical attraction. This is a romance book at its core, but it was such a bad romance because I couldn't tell why they loved each other. I couldn't tell why they liked each other. If the author were to pull this off well, I think it should have started with our priest falling in love with her, because if there is a foundation of love, then he could start asking himself the questions of, hey, why on earth would it be bad for me to be intimate with her or feel lust towards her if these are manifestations, physical manifestations of my love for her, right? That's a question. Could have gone so many other ways. And also, can I just say, our main character is the cringiest man alive. I'll get banned on YouTube if I say some of the stuff he says in that book, but he just, oh, the way he speaks, sometimes I had to put my Kindle down and take a lap around the house because it was just so cringy. Anyway, did not like that book. There was a new girl in town, and by that I mean BookTok had a new favorite, and of course I had to read it. It was Silver Elite by Dani Francis. This takes place in a world where there is a select group of people with mental abilities. They are called modified, and they are persecuted by this dystopian government. Our main character, Ren, is one of the most powerful modified people in existence, and she spent her entire life in hiding, although some incidents occur which start to garner the attention of command, so the rulers of the society. In order to escape imprisonment, she is sent to something called the Silver Block, which is an elite training institution where this government trains its most elite soldiers. At Silver Block, Ren's captain, so the leader of this whole training program, he is the son of the most ruthless general, the same man responsible for the mass murder of Ren's people. And of course, she immediately falls for him. A lot of people describe this as Fourth Wing, but in a divergent sort of setting, and I think that is a spot-on way of describing it. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I don't think it was great. 3 components to this story: the world, the romance, and the characters. As for the world, this is supposed to be a dystopian world, though it very rarely talks about what a dystopia is, what it means to be a dystopian society, how the society became dystopian. I want more information on the sorts of purges that were led against the modified. I want more information about how the government maintains control of its citizens, about the propaganda, the fear. That's what I wanted to see more of. And of course, dystopian stories often criticize our society by drawing certain parallels, and this book certainly did not do that. And for that reason, I see a lot of people calling it a military romance instead of a dystopian romance, and I absolutely agree that that is the correct terminology for this book, because the main plot is not the dystopian story, it is the romance. I hated the romance because it was insta-lust. Within seconds of locking eyes with the son of the most ruthless general in the entire society, she wants him. It wasn't even enemies to lovers. It just didn't make any sense to me. And on that note, let's talk about the characters, who were very, very inconsistent, especially our main character, Ren. We were told she was some sort of extraordinary person, but she made the dumbest decisions known to man. The author did say she wrote this story because she wanted a spicy dystopian story, and I think that very much just means that the actual substance of the world, the plot, the characters is just completely absent. So yeah, not the best read. However, very easy to read, very, very enjoyable. You know how I said I like to give myself whiplash when I read? Yes. Because the next book I read was genuinely one of my favorite books of the year. It was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This story is set in, of course, a magical gothic world in which there are 6 gods and 6 prophetesses who are known as diviners. Our main character Sybil is number 6 of these diviners, but when Sybil's 5 fellow diviners start to go missing, Sybil must embark on a quest accompanied by a cocky, arrogant knight and a sentient gargoyle to find out what happened to them. This was a 5-star read. It was absolutely magical. You have a mysterious gothic sort of atmosphere, an absolutely magical world with even more magical prose, magic, and a delicious slow burn romance. And the gargoyle. I love the gargoyle. I don't know that I would necessarily call this a romantasy. The romance is undoubtedly important, but the main plot is actually a quest. And I love a good quest story when they have little things to find, people to talk to, mini missions, obstacles to overcome. It was fast-paced, never for once was it boring. Well done, Rachel Gillig. I don't know how she keeps churning these out, but they're always masterpieces. The next book I read was also one that came highly recommended to people who liked The Night and the Moth, and it was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. In yet another enchanting world, the current leader, the current king, wants to step down from his position, and in order to replace him, there are 7 contenders who engage in these trials. These 7 contenders are drawn from 7 different factions that are named after animals in this world, and our main character Nima is the Raven contender. However, before these trials begin, one of the contenders is murdered, and so Nima, as well as participating in these trials, is tasked by the former king to discover who the murderer was and why the murder occurred. I gave this one 3.75 to 4 stars. I'm not too sure where my rating lies on this one because I thought it was really, really interesting. Just a unique story, so many interesting characters, a plot that keeps moving. It was genuinely really cool, but I didn't find myself gripped by the story as much as I thought I would. I just don't think it was as extraordinary as I was expecting it to be, but I would definitely recommend this book, especially to people who do like the concept of having trials in their stories. So yeah. And up next, my Shayla, Rewind It Back by Liz Tomforde, and this is the final book in the Windy City series, which is probably my favorite sports romance series of all time, so let's talk about it. This book follows Hallie and Rio. Hallie is an interior designer and Rio is a hockey player. Hallie and Rio grew up as next door neighbors together, and eventually they fell for one another as they got a little bit older. However, an incident occurs at the start of their 20s that drives them apart. they have not spoken to each other for 6 years. But by some strange twist of fate, Hallie and Rio end up living next to each other in Chicago because Hallie has landed an internship in Chicago and Rio's team, of course, plays in Chicago. And so we're looking at a childhood best friends, 2 lovers, 2 strangers story. 4 stars to this book. I absolutely ate this up. I love it so much. I know a lot of people hate second chance romances. I am not one of those people because, you know, the moment when they make eye contact after many years and all those feelings come rushing back, it makes me giddy. Something about Rio, which you'll know if you've read the rest of the series, is he's absolutely adorable. This is a puppy and Hallie is just perfect for him. She is so sweet. I loved it. I love the way that their dynamic works together. They are perfect for one another. In all of Liz Tomforde's books, you'll notice there's an element of, a very strong element of found family, and this is perfect in this book, especially seeing the cameos from all of the other characters. And there was no third act breakup. Love. We also get a hint as to who the next people in this series will be. Oh, not this series, but the rest of Liz Tomforde's books, we know what is coming next. The only criticism I do have about this book is that the tension between Hallie and Rio was broken at the 50% mark. And this isn't really a spoiler because it's quite normal for all of Liz Tomforde's books to kind of break that tension right here, which is fine. I have no opposition to that, but then why is the book another 200 pages long, right? That's the only criticism I have ever had of Liz Tomforde's books, I think. This was a perfect way to wrap up the series. Another banger up next. It was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. In this book, we follow several years out of our protagonist Joan's life as she trains to become an astronaut with NASA's astronaut corps, forms deep friendships with the rest of her astronaut candidates, and eventually ends up on an ill-fated mission to space. It is also, as the title says, a love story. It's a very strong underlying theme of the book as well, and I love how well Taylor Jenkins Reid explores these sorts of relationships. I loved it in The Seven Husbands. I love it here as well. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. Wonderful, wonderful book, and I expected no less from Taylor Jenkins Reid. And you can really see the amount of research Taylor Jenkins Reid puts into her work because it's passionate the way she writes about it. Our characters are, as always, very complex, very well formed. I also cried. This was spectacular. Oh my goodness. Whiplash once again. I picked up Releasing 10 by Chloe Walsh. This book follows Lizzie Young, and if you've read the rest of the Boys of Tommen series, you know that Lizzie, she is not the nicest person in the other books, and this is just a deep exploration into why she behaves the way that she does, what her story is, what her past is, what has shaped her into the person she becomes in the rest of the series. I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. What I think Chloe Walsh does really well is how she writes her characters and how she writes them to make us really care for them, and my heart goes out to Lizzie. I completely understand her. I feel she has been through so much, and if you do intend on picking this up or picking up any of the books in this series, you need to take a look at those trigger warnings because this one in particular is horrifying. Firstly, I know a lot of people on the internet are calling this book a trauma dump. I don't necessarily think it's just a trauma dump, but I understand what those people are saying in that it seems a lot of trauma was tossed right at Lizzie in order to force us to sympathize with her character. And guess what? It worked. Another thing I will say is that the children in this book, even though they've been through a lot, there's no denying, many of them just don't interact the way that children do. So there was that lack of reality in this book, and I'm talking about the language of 5 and 6 year olds, okay? I also didn't really love Lizzie's character in the last 30% because she repeatedly pushes the male main character Huey past his physical boundaries. I completely understand that the reason that she acted this way was a direct response to her own trauma. While that acts as an explanation for her behaviors, it does not act as an excuse for her behaviors. Wrong is still wrong. Also, I want to know if the adults are asleep in Ballylagan. Like, what are the adults doing? I've never been more thankful to have parents like my own because these parents suck. Your children are going through so much pain and no one is asking deeper questions. No one's picking up on a single sign. Anyway, I get angry about this in every single Boys of Tommen book I read. So the bad did outweigh the good, even though the writing was super addictive and I did care deeply about the characters. It just didn't do it for me. However, I do think the book that comes after this, I do think I'll really enjoy that. And the reason is that is going to be more of a journey of Lizzie's healing. And I'm very Very excited to see that after all of the pain I know she's been through. After the pain, the trauma that Chloe Walsh put me through, I was like, save me, Ali Hazelwood, save me. Ali Hazelwood came out with Problematic Summer Romance, and let me just tell you, it was exactly what I needed. This book follows a girl called Maya. Her elder brother Eli, who you might recognize from Not in Love, he is getting married in Sicily. So Maya has to spend a couple of weeks in this romantic Sicilian villa. However, Eli's best friend Connor is also there. Connor and Maya actually used to be pretty good friends for the past couple of years. However, their 15-year age gap plus Maya's consistent crush on Connor have complicated their relationship to the point where they have not spoken in 10 months. And now they are stuck in close proximity with one another in this romantic Italian villa. I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was just the perfect summer romance. It's currently winter in Australia, and God knows I was craving something like this story. This is an age gap romance, and I typically do not like age gap romances because the female main character is always portrayed as naive, or there's a big maturity gap between the two, but I didn't find that to be the case at all in this book. In fact, Maya was the one pursuing Connor. Maya was the one initiating, and I really did enjoy that. I know people prefer when men chase, but I find that with a solid age gap romance, if the man's the one chasing, sometimes it seems predatory, right? But not when she is the one who's really pushing for it. I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. The setting, Southern Italy, hell yeah. The romance was lovely as well. I really have no complaints about this. I had a lot of fun. But that is all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for spending another week with me. And let me know which sorts of videos you'd like to see. If you'd like vlog style videos, reading vlog style videos. Here's to another wonderful reading month, and I will see you next week. Bye.